Hi, everyone. It's Dr. Arlene D. Homko, the MultiDimensional MD. Thank you so much for joining me. My mission, as always, is to bring the intuitive aspects of health back to medicine in practical and tangible ways so that you can access deeper healing and experience more peace, love, and joy in your everyday lives. So, as you know, every week I will sit and meditate on what to talk about in this weekly YouTube live. And to this week, it was a little bit different because I felt called to share stories, just to talk and share stories from the last 12 years of having my own integrative medicine practice, which is also intuitive medicine and cranial osteopathy and energetic medicine and everything combined to make it this really multi-dimensional practice. So, what I'm going to do is go through some different concepts and things that I talk about. So, we're going to talk about talking to organs. I'm going to give examples from the lungs and the heart. We're going to talk about physical injuries and ways to look at that. We're going to talk about birth stories and the baby's connection to the world and family. I'll talk a little bit about epigenetics and how it started before you and talk about like different languages and ways to talk about health and healing. So if you stay with me, I'm going to go give examples for each one of those. So talking to organs. This is actually a really big part of integrative medicine, intuitive medicine, my style of cranial osteopathy. So, as a caveat, anything I'm describing here, this is my style. This doesn't mean that every other holistic integrative medicine practitioner does this or even any other osteopath. This is my style. This is my art and the way I approach things. So, talking to organs is such a useful way to assess what's going on and to both get information, give you a big picture landscape, and to see what needs tending to. So I had one patient call me, and this was actually virtual treatment. It was or a consultation. This was during COVID, and she we couldn't be in person. So anyway, she was having some hormonal issues. And she was concerned because she had gotten married. She was interested in having a baby someday, and she was concerned that her hormones, her menstrual cycle was off. And so her OB-GYN had started her on some contraception, some oral contraceptive pills. And so, but she was having a feeling that this wasn't something that was helpful for her. She's like, I don't feel it's right for me. I don't know why, but I just don't feel that it's right for me. She also had just one ovary, so she was very motivated to take care of that one ovary, especially being interested in having kids later on. So we talked through it, and we talked to her body, and we had her feel through her body too. And it was very interesting because her ovary was saying, it's not me. Everyone keeps looking at me. They think I'm the problem, but it's not me. So we kept going to, to different areas of the body, kind of scanning and seeing what else was going on. It's like, well, maybe, she's been under a lot of stress. She had a big move. There was stuff going on in her life. So what about the adrenals? Adrenals are really important for stress. And then the adrenals were saying, it's also not me, just keep going further on up. So it was just, this was a serious situation, but at the same time, there was something fun about it because these were the messages that we were getting from the different organs. And then it went to her lungs and her throat, her thyroid area, and there was something that wasn't being expressed fully. And so what it turns out was that there was a death of a very close friend, maybe her best friend, and she hadn't been able to really grieve and be there, and there was some guilt involved because she had moved and hadn't been there, been in the same location with her friend, and she thought, we had always planned on having babies together, growing, having families together. So there was all of this intense emotion that hadn't had an outlet of expression yet. So this is really fascinating. I know it's like in regular medicine, it's like, well, what does that have to do with her periods? And we could talk about like getting labs and things like that. But I just wanted to give you this beginning part of the story because it was so important in terms of efficiently getting to the bigger picture of things and understanding what was creating this hormonal imbalance. And so her ovary was actually feeling a lot of pressure from taking these extra hormones that it did not need, because it wasn't the ovaries issue. It was actually more from the thyroid and this energetic expression of having not been fully given herself time to grieve her friend that had passed. So anyway, we went through different mind body ways to address that, gave her some homework to address that, just having some time and space to honor her grief and her friend and to be able to speak to her friend. And things got better. So I just want to present to you way different perspectives and bigger pictures of looking at things. It doesn't mean don't get labs or don't use medications or don't use, regular allopathic medicine. It just means have other perspectives as well, because this can be so important in your healing at a deeper level and really getting more meaning out of life. So we can do this with all various organs. And if anyone's out there, if you have like, hey, I want to hear a story about this kind of thing, just let me know, because I have so many stories that I sometimes I don't even remember them until somebody asks. But okay, so the lungs are really important, especially when we've dealt with long COVID, pandemic, pneumonias. Now we're in the winter season, so flu time and things like that. So lungs can typically carry a lot of grief. And I had this little patient. She was how old was she? Preschool age, 3, 4 years old, and she started mouth breathing. This is what the mom was saying. She's like, she's mouth breathing more, so I'm concerned about her sinuses. And more people are aware of like, oh, okay, mouth breathing is not the optimal way to breathe. We're supposed to be able to breathe through our noses. So we felt into her sinuses, her lungs, her, just whole body, and knowing what was going on in the family. So this was another time where addressing grief was also essential, because there had been a death in the family, but a year prior, but the family had gotten together at some point. The extended family had gotten together, and she had felt it. This little girl had felt it. She seemed to be fine, but the mom said she's not as her bubbly self. She didn't think that she was affected by the extended family getting together, but in her lungs, I could feel this grief that she had. And what was interesting was that the mouth breathing was because she was trying to release and process what she was carrying in her lungs emotionally. So she wasn't actually, it wasn't an obstruction from her sinuses or her throat. It wasn't a tonsillar thing. It wasn't that. It was more she was sighing. She was taking sigh breaths, and sigh breaths are release breaths. So her body was attempting to release what it knew was there. And when we just gave her the opportunity to, so also gave them some exercises to do, or some mind body things. And then the osteopathic treatment, it can really help too, especially when we address the emotional body. And this is something that I teach other physicians to do, to be able to perceive and address the emotional body. Then that cleared that up. Pretty, like, even during the course of the appointment, you could see more color to her face, and she just brightened up, and she started acting more like her bubbly self, and her breathing was much improved. It wasn't anything really bad, but it was just those subtleties. And so just understanding that bigger picture, because we could have gone down the whole pathway of like, oh, sinus congestion, ENT, this and that, but to address what she was dealing with at that moment. So other examples could include like palpitations. I hear so many people have heart issues, and absolutely get checked out by your internist, absolutely get checked out by the cardiologist. I love to see people after that. And sometimes when you get checked out, you get a clean bill of health. They say, well, we didn't find anything. There's no arrhythmias. But then they're still left with, they don't, if something doesn't feel quite right in their chest. So any stress, any trauma, and I saw this especially with the pandemic, this happened to so many people, can create tension in the body. So the body will want to curl in towards fetal position, a protection mechanism. So it creates like this heart shield that actually can put physical tension on the heart, and it can interfere with the communication, the nerve communication, and even the optimal flow to and from the heart. So when that happens, then you can get like these feelings of palpitations, whether or not they can pick them up on the EKG or by the cardiologist. So being able to uncurl the heart, and I did a whole episode, is really important. So we can do this combined in a collaborative effort with specialists, with cardiologists. I'm not saying that anyone needs to be isolated from that world. It's like, it's not instead of, it's in addition to. So I believe in collaboration so that we can combine all our perspectives and have a bigger picture. It's a safer picture, and it expands what's available to you in terms of health and healing. So a quick exercise that I give over and over to people, besides this, which I'm doing because sitting all day in treatment, so I often need to open up my shoulders. But to do that, in addition to that, you can also just imagine if you had wings sprouting out from your back, where would they sprout out? Just imagine them opening up and growing nice and big and symmetric. And that imagination of it will energetically also help open up the back of your heart, help your love for yourself circle back around. So love out to the world, circle back around to yourself as well, and help lift this tension, opening up the front of the heart as well. So these aren't meant to be necessarily like one and done, but I'm giving you examples so you can have a wider perspective. We talk about physical injuries, and what does that mean in terms of the mental emotional layer? Because every physical injury also has a mental emotional component to it. They're intertwined. So if you don't address all those different dimensions, then one piece can still be kind of locked in or tucked away. It's contained. So whether that's presenting as ongoing physical symptoms, back pain, or ongoing mental emotional symptoms, stress, everything looks like a fire, that stress response that never really got a chance to calm down. So when you look at physical injuries, keep a multidimensional perspective. So the physical aspect, so say back pain or head injury, the headache, but then what's going on with the mental emotional shock? What did you feel when you had that injury, and was that able to express? Because a lot of times when we have an injury, we sort of like have that like breath like go in, and then we keep everything like this, and so it doesn't really get expressed all the way out. Or maybe you fall and you're in front of people and you felt like screaming out, but you didn't, and so that scream sort of gets locked away. So to just consider, like, if you've had a physical injury, what a mental emotional piece is there too, and can you give it a safe outlet for expression? So that balloon that's under tension can like deflate out and create more flow on all those different dimensions. I can tell you so many stories. Birth stories are really fun. I did a whole episode on birth and how that's important for you at any age, your birth story. And something I really love to check in all of the babies is, and actually any age adults, but is their connection to themselves. So if they're born, if they've really settled into their body, or was it stressful? And so they kind of felt a little squeezed out and they're out here in their little happy space. So partially dissociated, not completely grounded and present in their body. And you'll see that because their eyes will be not as bright and sparkling. They'll be slightly glazed or foggy, or maybe they just don't feel as comfortable as they could. I check their connection to their family members, mother, father, siblings. Is it nice and free? Are there ones that need tending to? Not to create any guilt for anybody, but it's like, well, chances are if it was a stressful birth for baby, it was a stressful birth for mom. If it was a stressful birth for mom, it was a stressful birth for baby. So that's the physics of it. You can't have one without the other. And and then also the connection to the world. So this is actually something I'll be teaching to physicians in January. We have a class, and we're going to talk about that connection and how to perceive that connection and ways that you can settle it. So I mean, anyone can really do this for themselves too. Just imagining their connection to loved ones, or their connections to themselves, to the environment. Do you feel safe in the environment? Do you feel safe with yourself? Do you feel safe in your body? Do you feel connected and emotionally safe with your loved ones? And I know I keep mentioning I did a podcast on that, but yes, I did do a podcast a couple of weeks ago on talking about emotional safety and how to create emotional safe space for yourself and others. So do check that out. And this is meant to be like a culmination of like, what have I seen in over a decade of practice. So just a note on epigenetics, it started before you. So this is true for everybody. We've all have ancestors and generations before us. So things did start before us, and there can still be an imprint on that. We know that through epigenetics, that things can be imprinted on the DNA, the regular nuclear DNA. But also, what I'm looking into is the mitochondrial DNA, which is a circular DNA, and it's more similar to like bacterial DNA. And what's interesting about the mitochondrial DNA is that it is all or almost all from your mother. So you can follow the maternal lineage from that. And 23andMe and those other companies you can actually look at your maternal lineage and see like where your ancestors came from following that. So that's something I'll also be teaching in January to physicians, is to be able to sense the mitochondria and to follow the maternal lineage in an energetic way, and how to address that. So anytime you have mitochondrial issues, and I talked about that a little bit in another podcast, but I would love to talk about that more because mitochondria is so fascinating. But anytime you have mitochondrial issues, energy issues, detoxification issues, immune stuff, the list goes on and on. Every cell in your body needs your mitochondria to create energy for it. So anytime you have mitochondrial issues, then also consider what's going on in the maternal lineage. It's something interesting to think about, and there might be hidden things there. So it's something to reflect on or to talk to the family. And again, this is not to blame anything, but it's meant to empower, because you can shift it. Any one person can shift epigenetics. Your genes do not determine your expression of them. It's also you can help determine the expression of some of your genes. And so genotype does not mean phenotype, which means the expression of genes. So one person can change it, and you can heal for the future. But in a way, you can heal for the past as well, because past hurts keep getting passed down. And when this is a much bigger way of thinking of things, but when you look at time as not completely linear, then you healing in this present moment, it heals past and future as well as the present. So, and then when I talk to people, I talk to you in the language that you're interested in. And this is great when you have a multidimensional perspective. A common message that I hear from some osteopaths or even other people in the holistic world is that sometimes people don't understand what they're talking about. And that's because we have to talk to people in the language that they understand. You have to talk to them in a framework that they already have. Otherwise, it can feel like it's too out there and they don't get it. So if you want to talk engineering, I can talk to engineering. If you want to talk anatomy and physiology, I can do that. If you want to talk about energy centers and chakras, and I can do that. If you want to talk about the moon cycles and the seasons, then we can talk about how that affects you. So like the winter right now, where it's really kind of more coming in. And this is why I guess I'm doing some of this reflection of reviewing like things from the past and things I've talked about in the past and over the last decade of my experience. So if you're interested in talking about emotion, which more and more people, I'm so happy that they're coming to me and asking to talk about emotion and emotional trauma, and really having courage to look at that, then I'm happy to talk about that. So if you're not interested in some of those things, then we don't have to talk about in that language. When you talk about a truth, the more different ways that you talk about it, you're talking about the same thing, but from different perspectives. And when you have those different perspectives, then it gives you a bigger understanding of things. So there's, um, it's I'm happy to like switch languages and be able to talk about things in so many different ways, and I'm open to learning new ways to talk about things. And so that's what I've been doing over the years, is actually going back to medicine. How do I explain what I'm doing in this multidimensional way and bring that back to medicine and speak their language? So this language I use to speak to other physicians might be slightly different than the way I speak to my patients, unless they're in the medical field. So, any questions that you have, I love it, because it also, if I don't know the answer, then it challenges me to broaden my perspectives and to see an answer for you, to just reflect, to study, to learn from other people, and together we can learn. And to just kind of close this all, um, when I give homework for people, I really look to look for the path of ease, to walk the path of ease, because I often say small steps done consistently create miraculous results. So if you can do an easy thing but do it consistently, then I will be able to tell at the next appointment if you've done your homework. If you haven't, it's okay. Life happens. But we'll take a look at that too. And it's like, what is the trouble with doing that kind of homework? Or is there a different way we should approach that? So it does take courage in this kind of multidimensional healing, because you're looking at the wholeness of you, of your being. And to be able to embrace all of you, it means to embrace those parts of you that we might call our shadow sides. And they've done whole other podcasts on that too. And when you do that, you can shift and grow. And so they what looks like a weakness can actually be one of your greatest strengths. And I remember that for myself too. I have the grace to look at my own life like that, and remembering how shy and quiet I was growing up, and how hesitant I would be to speak, and then look at me like doing so much talking now. And one thing that people tell me often is like, with the way you explain things, it just helps me. It helps it be so clear to me. Like, you have a way of saying things that helps me understand it, and it makes it easy to digest, easy to access, and clear. And that's my hope always, to speak with clarity and to speak from the heart and to empower you, because I don't own any of my patients. I'm here to help you, and you can visit as you need the help. But my hope is to help you see the true light of your being, that light and love that is you. And once you realize that, then you can access this depth of healing that's always available to you. And I'm here just as an assist, because the truly healing comes from inside of you. And I believe in you, so I hope that you believe in you too. So I hope that was helpful in some way. If you are would like to hear stories about any particular thing, please ask me. I have seen so many different things. There is nothing too strange for me or out there. And I love putting it all together. I love describing it in various languages. I could tell it would be a neat exercise, for me to do, like tell the same story in medical language, then in emotional language, then in energy centers language, and then anatomy, physiology, and then physics. So maybe I'll do that sometime, and that'll be another episode. Getting ideas as I'm chatting with you here. So if you'd like to connect with me in other ways, please do. Please like and subscribe. You can find me on Instagram at All Worlds Health, on Facebook, All Worlds Health and Pediatrics, and on my website, allworldshealth.com. I send out my e-love letters every week on Wednesdays, and I pop in here on Wednesdays as well to do a live. So subscribe and you'll be notified for the lives, because then if you're here live too, you can ask me questions live and I can answer them in a general way, not in a giving medical advice way. But anyway, have a beautiful rest of your week. Love to all of you, and I'll see you next time. Thanks for being here. Bye.